Aileen Carol Wuornos was an American serial killer. In 1989 to 1990, while engaging in street work along highways in Florida, she shot dead and robbed 7 of her male clients. She claimed that her clients had either arred or attempted to arr her, and that the homicides of the men were committed in self-defense. She was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders. She was executed on the 9th of October 2002 by lethal injection after spending more than 10 years on Florida's death row. In the feature film Monster 2003, her story is described from her first murder until her execution. For her portrayal of Wuornos, Charlize Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Born Aileen Carol Pittman on the 29th of February 1956 in Rochester, Michigan, her mother Diane Wuornos, born 1939, was 14 when she married Eileen's father, 18-year-old Leo Pittman, 1936 until 1969, on the 3rd of June 1954. On the 14th of March 1955, Eileen's older brother, Keith, was born. After less than 2 years of marriage and 2 months before Aileen was born, Diane filed for divorce. She gave birth to Aileen at the age of 16. Wuornos never met her father. In 1969, Leo Pittman was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He later committed suicide by hanging in prison on the 30th of January 1969. In January 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, leaving them with their maternal grandparents, Laurie and Britta Wuornos, both alcoholics who legally adopted Keith and Aileen on the 18th of March 1960. Laurie and Britta were Americans of Finnish descent. By the age of 11, Wuornos began engaging in sexual activities in schools in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She also exchanged sexual activities with her brother. In 1970, at the age of 14, she became pregnant after being arred by a family friend. She gave birth to a boy at home for unwed mothers on the 23rd of March 1971, and her child was placed for adoption. A few months after her son was born, she dropped out of school about the same time that her grandmother died of liver failure. When she was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house and she began living in the woods near her old home and supported herself through work. On the 27th of May 1974, at 18, she was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado for a DUI, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear. In 1976, she hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gratz Fell. They married quickly, and the announcement of their nuptials was printed in the local newspaper society pages. Wuornos continually involved herself in confrontations at the local bar and went to jail briefly for assault. She also hit Fell with his own cane, leading him to gain a restraining order against her within weeks of the marriage. She was sent to Michigan, where on the 14th of July 1976 she was arrested at Bernie's Club in Mansalona, Antrim County, and was charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. On the 17th of July, her brother Keith died of esophageal cancer, and Wuornos received $10,000 from his life insurance. Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage on the 21st of July after only 9 weeks. In August 1976, Wuornos was given an $105 fine for drunk driving. She used the money she inherited from her brother to pay the fine and spent the rest within 2 months buying luxuries, including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. In 1976, at the age of 22, she attempted suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. Between ages 14 and 22, she attempted suicide 6 times. On the 20th of May 1981, she was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for the armed robbery of a convenience store when she stole $35 and 2 packets of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on the 4th of May 1982 and released on the 30th of June 1983. On the 1st of May 1984, she was arrested again for attempting to pass forged checks in a bank in Key West. On the 30th of November 1985, she was named in a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On the 4th of January 1986, she was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice for providing identification bearing her aunt's name. Miami police officers found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition in the stolen car. On the 2nd of June 1986, Volusia County deputy sheriffs detained her for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun in his car and demanding $200. She was found to be carrying spare ammunition, and the police discovered a .22 pistol under the passenger seat she had occupied. In 1986, then aged 30, she met 24-year-old Tyra Moore, a motel maid at the Daytona Beach gay bar called Zodiac. They moved in together, and Mona supported them with her earnings as a worker. On the 4th of July 1987, Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore at the bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. On the 12th of March 1988, Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She claimed that he pushed her off the bus following a confrontation. Moore was listed as a witness to the incident. Later at her trial, Wuornos stated, before her execution, Wuornos claimed to still be in love with Moore. Wuornos murdered 7 men within 12 months. All of the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. Richard Charles Mallory, 51, an electronics store owner in Clearwater, was murdered on the 30th of November 1989. Wuornos claimed that Mallory beat, and sodomized her after he drove her to an abandoned area for Eshwell services. Mallory was Wuornos' first victim, and she claimed to have killed him in self-defense. Later, it became known that Mallory had previously been convicted of attempted R in Maryland. Aileen made no mention of this until she stood trial, and Moore never claimed she mentioned it to her. 2 days after the murder, a Volusia County deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned vehicle. On the 13th of December, his body was found several miles away in a wooded area. He had been shot several times, and 2 bullets in the left lung were found to have been his cause of death. David Andrew Spears, 47, a construction worker in Winter Garden. He was declared missing on the 19th of May 1990. On the 1st of June 1990, his naked body was found along US 19 in Citrus County. He had been shot 6 times with a .22 pistol. Charles Edmund Caxcaden, 40, part-time rodeo worker, was murdered on the 31st of May 1990. On the 6th of June 1990, his naked body was found in Pasco County. He had been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. His body had been wrapped in an electric blanket and was badly decomposing when found. Witnesses saw Wuornos in possession of his car, and Wuornos had also pawned a gun identified as belonging to him. Peter Abraham Seames, 65, retired merchant seaman. In June 1990, Seaman left Jupiter, Florida for Arkansas. On the 4th of June 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car after Wuornos' handprint was found on the interior door handle. His body was never found. Troy Eugene Burgess, 50, sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida. On the 31st of July 1990, he was reported missing. On the 4th of August 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. He had been shot twice. Charles Richard Humphreys, 56, retired United States Air Force Major, former state child abuse investigator and former chief of police, was murdered on the 11th of September 1990. On the 12th of September 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and had been shot 7 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Suwannee County. Walter Gino Antonio, 61, trucker, security guard and reserve police officer. On the 19th of November 1990, his nearly naked body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He'd been shot 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found in Brevard County. On the 4th of July 1990, Wuornos and Tyra Moore abandoned victim Peter Seames' car after they were involved in an accident. Rhonda Bailey, who witnessed the accident, provided police with a description of 2 women, which later led to a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in pawn shops. Wuornos' fingerprint that was found on a receipt at one of the pawn shops matched the print that was left on Seames' car. Wuornos had a criminal record in Florida, and samples of her prints were in a database. On the 9th of January 1991, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County on the pretext of outstanding warrant in her name of Laurie Grody. Police located Moore the next day in Pittston, Pennsylvania. She agreed to elicit a confession from Wuornos in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put up in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos, pleading for her help in clearing her name. 3 days later, on the 16th of January 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed that the men had tried to hour her and killed them in self-defense. In November 1991, she was legally adopted by 44-year-old Aileen Wuornos, with whom Wuornos had no previous contact or relation after Wuornos simply saw Wuornos' photo in a newspaper. On the 14th of January 1992, Wuornos was sent to trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory. Although previous convictions were normally inadmissible in criminal trials, under Florida's Williams rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to the other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. On the 27th of January 1992, she was convicted of Mallory's murder with the help from Moore's testimony. After sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that she was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with BPD and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Her defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory was previously convicted for attempted art in Maryland and served a sentence in a maximum security correctional facility providing remediation for sexual offenders. Records obtained from the correctional institution showed that from 1958 to 1962, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent to art. These records also reflect 8 years of overall treatment in this facility. In 1961, however, the judge refused to allow the records to be admitted in the court as evidence and denied Wuornos' request for a retrial. On the 31st of March 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest in the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Richard Burness, and David Andrew Spears, saying that she wanted to. In a statement to the court, she said, in part, on the 15th of May 1992, she was given 3 more death sentences. In June 1992, she pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Carskadden. In November 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. In February 1993, she pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Gino Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Abraham Seams, as his body was never found. In all, Wuornos received 6 death sentences. She told several inconsistent stories about the killings. She claimed initially that all 7 men had either art or attempted to art her while she was working as a S-worker, but later recanted the claim for self-defense, citing robbery was a desire to leave no witness as the reason for the murder. During an interview with documentarian Nick Broomfield, when Wuornos thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at that point, and wanted to die. She was incarcerated at the Florida Department of Corrections Broward Correctional Institution Death Row for Women, then transferred to Florida State Prison for execution. Her appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied in 1996. In a 2001 petition to the Florida Supreme Court, she stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. She wrote, while her attorneys argued that she was not mentally competent to make such a request, Wuornos insisted that she knew what she was doing, and the court-appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In 2002, Wuornos began accusing prison patrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She said that she had overheard conversations among prison personnel and she also complained of strip searches, tight handcuffing, door kicking, frequent window checks, and low-pressure mildew on a mattress, and workers threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain officers were on duty. Her attorney stated that he added, in the weeks before her execution, Wuornos gave a series of interviews to documentarian Nick Broomfield and talked about in a final interview, she once again charged that her mind was at BCI and that her head was crushed by food poisonings and other abuses worsened, she said, each time she complained to make her appear insane or drive her insane. She turned to the interviewer. Her final on-camera words were, Dawn Botkins, a childhood friend of Wuornos, later told Bloomfield that her verbal abuse was directed at society and the media in general, not him specifically. Her execution by lethal injection took place on the 9th of October 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, she died at 9:47 a.m. EDT. She was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the US to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. After her death, her body was cremated. Her ashes were scattered beneath a tree in Michigan by her childhood friend Dawn Botkins. At Wuornos' request, Natalie Merchant's song Carnival from her album Tiger Lily 1995 was played at her funeral. Wuornos spent many hours listening to this album while on death row. While Merchant found out about this, she gave permission to use it as a song in the closing edits of Nick Broomfield's documentary Aileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer 2003. When director Nick Bloomfield sent a working edit of the film, Broomfield later speculated on Wuornos' state of mind and motives. According to some specialists, Wuornos' crimes have been related to her psychopathic personality and a psychotraumatic past. Assessed during the psychopathy checklist, she scored 32 out of 40 with a cut-off score of 30 before determining psychopathy. She was known to meet the relevant criteria for determining BPD and antisocial personality disorder. According to Bryce Arrigo, her childhood sexual abuse and career in S-work irrevocably damaged her, and it could be seen that traumatic experiences throughout most of her young life would play a part in her psychological state, including her biological mother's departure as well as her grandmother ignoring the abuse she endured from her grandfather, thus leading to a lack of development of a mother-daughter bond for Wuornos as a young girl. The damage was then made worse because both Wuornos and her brother believed that the grandparents were their biological parents, but at the age of 11 they learned that this was not the case, which further damaged the relationship between Wuornos and her adoptive parents. Wuornos was also known to have early behavioural problems such as having an explosive temper, which limited her ability to make friends, as well as making it increasingly difficult for her to maintain relationships. Her traumatic upbringing, including her physical and sexual abuse, have been partially linked to the development of her BPD. Such severe trauma can be said to also disrupt the structuralization of the mind at various developmental points and result in FBI profiler Robert Resler briefly mentions Wuornos in his autobiographical history of his 20 years with the FBI, writing in 1992 that he said that he often does not discuss female serial killers because they tend to kill in sprees instead of in a sequential fashion. He noted Wuornos as the sole exception. Resler, who allegedly coined the term serial killer to describe murderers seeking personal gratification, does not apply to women killing in postpartum psychosis or to any murderer acting solely for financial gain, such as women who have killed a series of boarders or spouses.